Okay, thank you. Well, two words about Pastis is our research unit at the Department of Sociology of the University of Padova, which is the university where I'm working. And we are sociologists who focuses on science and technology and a different kind of analysis about the relation between society and science, society and technology. More specifically, I work on technology and the use of technology in everyday life. This is one of my main interests in this area. So I want to present you a work I'm actually developing about the use of technologies and the way in which devices and technology are in some way modified in forms that are different from those producers configured and established. And okay, the title is regards the worm and the apple, which of course is not connected with agriculture techniques or something like that, but is well, Apple. You know, Apple is the company. Californian company of hardware and software, and the worm is a metaphor which regards the way in which there are, like the worm in the apple, there are ways of using technology which are not expected to happen and are different from the regular ways to use technologies. So I will present you two cases of modification of technologies and two ways of hacking these technologies and these devices. Okay, before entering in the topic of the presentation, I will say two words about Steve Jobs. I don't want to be an obituary about Steve Jobs. Just want to look at one interesting thing. It seems to me is happening today at global level, which is this kind of sacralization of the figure of Steve Jobs. And this is not something which it does not regard only California or United States. What is really interesting in my vision is that it is a global process of sacralization of this figure. And I put there many different web page of international newspapers. And as you can see, in all over the world, the first news, the most important news yesterday and today was the death of Steve Jobs. And we have here China Daily, Globo is a Brazilian journal. There we have also an Egyptian journal where there is the photo of Steve Jobs. Then we have this is here we have the main Italian newspaper, and Apple is the first and most important news. And it's interesting because in my remembers, I think that we can compare that with I don't know, with the Pope, when the Pope died, or with Lady Di died. And I mean, yeah, so very particular cases. And I think that this is very interesting to understand what the role, in some way, the role of technology in our society, in our culture, how this case of Steve Jobs will become, in some way, foundational myth to speak about technologies and what we mean with technology and the role of technology in our life. Okay, just that about Steve Jobs. And I go on presenting the structure of this talk. I will start with a short introduction about the main topics of this talk, which are Apple, of course, then the hacking and society, the relation between hacking and society, and the idea that consumption is an important element we can focus on. Then I will present you two stories about hacking of Apple hardware, which are, one is Hackintosh, which regards computer and personal computer and netbook, and another one is jailbreaking, which regards the mobile devices from Apple, mainly iPhone and iPad. Then I will do some comments and remark after these two cases, which regards what kind of idea we can develop on starting from these two cases on the relation between hacking, consumption, Web 2.0, which we will see it's important, it's an important piece of the stories, and this idea of the relevance of an ordinary consumer hack, how is that we will see now that it's important to see which kind of role can we recognize to this more popularized form of hacking devices in contemporary society. Okay, let me start with hacking in society. Okay, this is better. So one of the first idea of all this story is that hacking practices are not today are not only just connected with professional or software jerks, people with esoteric cultures and something very complicated which belongs to a different cultural sphere. And usually when in social sciences there are some consideration about hacking, we have this consideration connected with production, not with consumption. Usually hacking is something that produces software, produces illegality in some field, but not something which regards the consumption, how people consume, how people use technologies or services or something like that. And we can probably, if we start to consider that from a consumer point of view, we can see that the modification of goods and of things it's something which is something that we can see often in society, and we have many different examples of that. One of the examples are, for example, the IKEA furnitures. People have to go there and to buy something which is packed and then bring at home, and they have to work in some way. Then we have also other examples that are, for example, in fashion. We have many examples about the fact that people change and modify the clothes they buy. Or, for example, for me, a very interesting example is bicycle in San Francisco, where people is used to not to buy, just to buy bicycles which are ready and in the shape producers do standard bicycle, but they like to change this bike, personalize, and I mean, the idea is that in consumer culture, the process of modification of the consumer's goods are very, very, very present. And also in digital culture, in the concepts of digital culture, we have many different examples of how people modify in some way. We can say hack, but more in general modify some equipment. For example, mobile phones. Many people change the software inside their mobile phone, they're personalized, customized, and so on. On laptops, they learn how to install pirate software, illegal software, for example, which is a basic form of hacking. And well, and we can also see that there are many, well, there are some examples connected with how people hack, how common people hack some kind of technologies, especially connected with media. The unlocking of mobile phone, to use the phone with a different carrier, or to put the chip in the PlayStation to use illegal games. Or I know many people in Italy that have illegal cards to see the satellite television without paying the full amount of money they have to. Okay, the idea is that hacking, the main idea is that hacking is something probably connected with more ordinary context than that of programmers or people which work in a professional way with software technologies. So why Apple? Sometimes when I present this kind of material, people ask me why Apple. There is a cultural reason, because probably Apple is one of the more interesting brands and more interesting producer of technology. There is a technical reason, because Apple is more interesting, because Apple technologies are more closer than other technologies. For example, of Android operating system mobile phones, which are based on a more open, more open system. So it's easier to, in some way, understand the boundaries between closure and openness and explain how this hacking works. And then there is a social reason. Well, you can say social in a broader sense. Apple is interesting. People are interested in Apple technologies, so people buy. They want to have this technology. So it's in some way interesting to work on objects that people desire, people want to buy, people actually buy. Okay, this is just to give a general introduction of what we will see in the presentation. So I will start with presenting you the first case, which is the Hackintosh. What Hackintosh is? Okay, Hackintosh is the result of a collaborative hacking project which consists in running Apple operating system on non-Apple hardware, which are the same architecture in their microprocessors. It means that basically running Apple software on non-Apple machine which have Intel processor, which are shared both by Apple and other kind of technologies. Okay, making an Hackintosh requires mainly software tweaking, software modification. In some case, it also requires some hardware modification, especially in changing some part of the computer. For example, one example is the Wi-Fi card. Some Wi-Fi cards are not compatible with some Wi-Fi card that we can find in non-Apple computer are not compatible with with Apple software. So if you want to have that working, you have to change the material piece of hardware. Okay. It's very simple what is an Hackintosh. An Hackintosh is taking a PC with like the first one and transforming that in a PC with an Apple operating system, fully working. Okay, the story of the Hackintosh in very few points. In 2006, Apple changed their processor. Apple switched from the Motorola processor produced by Motorola to processor produced by Intel, the same which work with Windows. 1 month after, start to appear different ways hacker developed to install Apple software on non-Apple hardware. One year after, there are start to appear more simpler ways to do this form of modification, and it became more simple for people who are not able to working with informatic codes or complex informatic competencies. in 2008, a commercial firm started to sell a commercial Hackintosh. Basically, they start to sell computers which are not Apple hardware with Apple hardware. They will stop. They later will be stopped by Apple. In 2008 and 2009, when netbooks, these cheap small computers, became very popular, there is a growth of the interest in people to do this modification, because it's a very cheap way to have a very small working Apple computer. This 2 years before, Apple released their own netbook. In some way, it was a request from many advanced users to have this computer. Today, the community surrounding all this practice connected with the Hackintosh, it's follow to develop new ways to produce an Hackintosh, also connected with the change in Apple policy. Actually, the last operating system by Apple can only be downloaded from the Apple websites from the store. So the hackers are developing new ways to hack do the software modification, which in some way are a consequence of the change in Apple policy. Okay, we have now I will show you some of the spaces and contexts that allow the circulation of contents and knowledge that are involved in the practice of modification. Of course, we can find websites where there are a lot of information about how to do, what kind of tool, what kind of content knowledge you have to learn in order to do this modification. We also have web forums where people discuss about how to do it. They discuss problems, they try to solve their problems in performing the modification. But this is quite normal. I mean, it's something that it's very common that in some specific context and community, people develop websites to discuss and to develop tools to do something complex. For me, it's more interesting to see that this kind of practice is have been also popularized in some way through different channels, which are not specific for a professional or very expert community. And one of the examples is a very popular website which works on which present news about technologies, which is Gizmodo. And for example, this is a page where they explain in a very simple way one of the simplest method to transform a Dell netbook into an Hackintosh. One other very interesting thing I found in the research was this chart. Was a chart which, as you can see, showed the compatibilities between some of the most popular netbook, which are commercialized in about the end 2009, beginning of 2010, and the kind of different functions will work if you install the Apple software, and which other doesn't work. And which is very interesting in this is that they simplify all the set of knowledge required to the modification, and they also tell you directly where to buy the Windows netbook that you have to later modify in some way. And this is very similar in a cultural sense to the charts you can find in magazines, for example, where devoted to stuff related with consumers, where there is the rating of different products you can buy. well, for example, I started in the research. I started from this chart, trying to do an Hackintosh from by myself, and well, the result was this pink MacBook Nano was a Asus netbook, which I transformed in a both in the software and in the appearance. You can see the Apple there in a working working Hackintosh. Okay, I don't want to focus on that. What I want to say, and this next image helped me to explain that, and that what is interesting is the process of popularization of this kind of objects. And this is the example here is it's not clear, but it's a this is a page from eBay. One way to get an Hackintosh is to buy that ready from eBay, which is one different way through which we can see that this complex form of modification of technology, which before was possible only for very skilled people, now is accessible for different kind of people through the simplification of the information, through the different form of simplification of the competence required, but also through different ways of buying and selling these modified technologies. Okay, well, I will skip some. I have well, a case. Well, what Apple think about? Apple is not. It does not agree with this practice, of course. There is the one specific when you buy Apple computer, you also buy the software. In the software is a contract you establish with Apple, and this contract says, which is the end user's license agreement, says that you cannot install Apple software or non-Apple hardware. So this is not allowed. And in fact, in 2008, Apple went against this SiStar, which was the company who transformed all that business, all that practice of modification in a business. And of course, in 2000, for example, Apple also asked the Wired magazine to, in 2009, asked Wired magazine to remove one of the guides Wired proposed to the readers about how to perform a modification. Okay, I will skip one part, which is probably not. Okay, this is the first case, the end of the first case. What I want to underline about this case is the fact that this kind of hacking practices, of modification of technologies, are in some way undergoing a process of popularization. And this popularization both regard probably the way people are more able to play with technologies, because people in some way now are able to install software for their own, so they can also perform some form of some little task more complex. But also with the fact that there are different form of circulation of knowledge, of cultural elements you need to perform these modifications. And well, I will develop this argument later. Now, the second case. This second case regards the jailbreaking. Some of you have heard about jailbreaking before. Some of you have a jailbroken iPhone or something like that?
I have.
Okay, so some of you know that. Okay, what is jailbreaking? Before I have to do some short introduction about iPhone. iPhone is a very famous mobile phone. All of you know, some of you probably owns. I don't own one, but it's a very popular mobile phone. The iPhone started to be sold in 2007. There are several models. There are 5 models. One have been presented 2 days ago. Okay, one of the interesting things in the iPhone is that there is the App Store. The App Store is basically the website where there are 500 million apps, different apps available to buy or to download from freely. And this is one of the powerful elements in the iPhone successful. One problem is that this app, not all the app can be sold through the App Store, because Apple decide which kind of application can be sold and which other can be rejected. There are 2 main reasons because Apple rejects applications. One is connected with their function. Apple, for example, don't want that you use Wi-Fi in some specific way to connect many different mobile phones and share internet connection to Wi-Fi. So if you present an application of this kind, Apple say, no, I don't want to put it in the store, you cannot sell. And another one, another form of, another reason because Apple rejects application is content restriction, for example, sex. And Apple and Steve Jobs had very specific idea about that. And for example, in 2010, he says that Apple have a moral responsibility to keep porn off their phone. And there are many debates about what can be considered porn and what is not porn. And there is, for example, a very cultural difference about what is porn and what is not porn between Europe and United States. For example, German magazine had a lot of problem because they are used to show tits a lot on their magazines, and that was on the most popular daily, and that was not okay for Apple. Okay, and basically the jailbreaking of the iPhone is a software modification allowing to install and use unauthorized software and contents. And unauthorized means software which have been rejected by Apple and not distributed through the App Store, or pirate software which have not been bought in a regular way. Okay, I will do a very short story of jailbreaking. In 2007, June, Apple released the iPhone. 12 days later, first jailbreak method is released by hackers. In February 2008, an hacker established the Cydia store, which is the illegal shop for illegal applications rejected by Apple, which are available through this illegal store. In 2008, a hacker developed a method to jailbreak the iPhone through a graphical interface. Before, you had to mess with codes, with complex stuff, just something which a very skilled user could do. Now it's possible through a graphic interface. In 2009, Cydia introduced a simple and unified payment system. So Cydia became very similar to be used like the App Store. You have websites. I will show you an image later. In 2010, the Library of Congress rules that jailbreaking is explicitly exempted from the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It means that jailbreaking is legal. People can do it's not a problem to jailbreak the phone. It's not a problem to sell software for jailbreaking phones. In 2010, probably the last step of interesting step is that Comex, which is an hacker, an important hacker in this jailbreaking scene, developed a new method to jailbreak the iPhone, which basically consists in visiting with the browser websites, which is jailbreakme 2.0.jailbreakme.com, and say yes to a form, and automatically your iPhone will be jailbroken. So something which is very simply and which is basically the same way iPhone users do everything with their phone, like the same gesture like answer to a phone. Okay, this is the page of jailbreakme.com, which I visited with a new iPad. So the page told me that with my new iPad, with the last software, I cannot jailbreak my phone because they are actually developing the new jailbreaking for the new software released by Apple. This is one of some images from the store, from the Cydia store, which is the store where you can buy the unauthorized software for a jailbreaking phone. And so it's something which is the same consumer experience users do when they go to the App Store. Well, some details of the Cydia store is interesting. In 2009, since that 7% of iPhone, this is what the Cydia store say to the New York Times, have jailbroken iPhone, about more than 2 million phones. In 2011, Cydia did 10 million in annual revenue selling unauthorized applications, with, I mean, a lot of millions of users weekly. Something which is huge. It's not just for some jack people messing up with their phone. In October 2010, Cydia acquired the second selling store for unauthorized software. Its competitor in selling this software. So we can see that in this scene, we can see the merging of companies. I mean, practices which are much more common in the market, in the regular market, than in the hacker scene. During this process of acquisition, the Rock Your Phone, which is the name of this other shop, released their data, which is quite impressive in the quantity. They say that the software you need to buy and to download unauthorized software have been 4.5 million from 220 different countries. Okay, in this new scene of commercial unauthorized software, based on the fact that users have to hack their phone in a simple way, but they have to decide to hack their phone. There is the development of situations that are very similar to what we can find in the market in the consumption process. For example, advertising. There are many companies that advertise their application for jailbroken iPhones, and also in the fashion that advertising works. I mean, they say, need an iPad to iPhone connection? Wi-Fi is so 2010. Try my Wii on demand. And it's a way to say that all this situation, it's in some way translated in a cultural code, which is the code of consumption, also concerning the advertising. Also, well, we have many other different examples. There are websites that do review and ratings of application for jailbroken iPhones. So the same what happened for the regular software. There are, of course, popular websites that explain how to jailbreak your phone. Another one before was Gizmodo. Now there is the Engaged, which explain that you can install, you can have Flash. Apple don't want you have Flash on your iDevices. You can get Flash through the jailbreaking. Well, YouTube is full of. Okay, it doesn't work. Was a video. If you go on YouTube, you will find a lot of videos where there are teenagers which explain you how to jailbreak your phone in a very simple and very basic way. Then we can also find all different production of cultural representations surrounding this practice of jailbreaking. I put there some of them just to make you understand that there is a more general production of representation of culture or of visual forms around this practice. And the first one is not a real book. It's a fake book which have been reproduced in one website which is explaining how to jailbreak your phone. Okay, one more point about jailbreaking is politics of jailbreaking. There is a lot of politics and criticism in the practice of jailbreaking. This is Gay Freeman. This is the guy one of the hackers who started the jailbreaking practice and the jailbreaking scene. Is the owner of Cydia Store. Is the one who decided to acquire his competitor in the scene of the jailbroken application. And in his websites, he's a very interesting figure. He has a very interesting website. In this website, he explained why he started the jailbreaking. And I got one of the more meaningful sentences about why he did. And he writes, "I have very little respect for Apple at this point. I make no secret of this fact. Apple as a company has turned into a corporate hypocrisy, embodying the very ideals that it claims to be rebelling against. Think different as a slogan has become a cold criticism of their own action with regard to their products lines. Apple's insistence on controlling the experience of their products sounds very similar to the garden of pure ideology exposed by the big brothers in their own commercial." Maybe you remember the commercial, in the famous commercial. Okay, this is why many of us, upwards 10% of iPhone users, in fact, jailbreak our devices. We want choice. Okay, here we can see many different topics from the sentence. This is the idea to, in some way, fighting against the big company, which want to control the experience of the user of their technologies. There is also this idea that we want choice, and this sounds very like idea and a rhetoric that is very widespread in consumer culture or consumer counterculture. The idea of the choice of the consumer is one of the column of many discourses in consumer protection, for example. I mean, this is one more example of the fact that we are not just seeing something connected with people who want to play with their devices. We can find many different things in this war connected with jailbreaking, modification of mobile phone, of software, of the new ways of commerce. of the software. And one point, okay, I think that this could be the end of this second story about this second way of hacking Apple hardware. I want to just now few minutes to do some comments, some remarks about these two stories. Okay, one first thing is that I like to see jailbreak, especially jailbreaking. Well, this is an error. Jailbreaking as a sort of pret-à-porter hacking practice. Now, it's an example to see that while before hacking required a lot of very complex knowledges and very complex skill, today it's all this complexity has been in some way reduced and translated in something which is very available for the lay users, the common user. We can describe that, for example, as the hackerization of consumer practices. It means that we can describe that of that as something which tells us about the fact that the modification of technologies and of objects is something which is even more integrated in the contemporary consumer practices and behaviors. Now, the hacking is something which is present in how people consume and use the objects. Not all the people do that, but many people do that. But we can also describe that as the consumerization of hacking practices. Before, I mean, the classic way to think about hacking was something which was connected with people who belong to a small community with a lot of people who share a lot of knowledge, and probably they share a specific job in informatics and specific also belief. There is all this idea of the ethics of hacking. I mean, it's a war with very strict cultural codes, and the way these kind of practices evolve in this Apple hacking is something different, and something that is connected with translate all to put many different elements which belong to the culture of consumption in the context of what was the classical hacking context and work. So probably we can think about this example as hybridization between consumption and hacking. There are many elements which belong to the original hacking, which are the modification, a lot of elements which clearly belongs to the hacking. But there are also many elements which belongs to the codes, cultural codes and practices of consumer culture. What we can say, I think, is that these examples show us that there is a new terrain for the redefinition of what we mean as consumption and what we mean as production. All the store, unauthorized store, is possible only because there is the active decision of users to jailbreak and hack their phone. So there is, it's the relation between production and consumption in some way change in the production of the value of the objects you have, you buy and use. And also there is probably a redefinition of the relation between capitalism and what I define out of the market practices, which are the practices which were, I mean, hacking was something connected with sharing for free information, sharing for free knowledge, okay? And we see that many of these elements are translated in the market, in how the market works. There are companies who sell software. It's something different from what hacker originally thought about how software and information circulates. And well, probably we can recognize that this idea of the ordinary consumer hack, the fact that the ordinary consumer, which is not involved in some esoteric informatic knowledge and competence, has a role in how all this stuff of digital cultural consumption or digital consumer culture is developing. This example are something which is relevant in the decision of Apple or about how to do the software, is important in the context of developers of application for the operating system of Apple. It's something that in some way have an influence about how all the stuff are developing. Okay, I probably it's 45 minutes I'm talking. I can stop here and see if you have some comments, some questions, some idea, some criticism.